Hello and welcome back to Voyage of a Time Wanderer. Today I'm very excited to be sharing with you all my Victober 2020 TBR. In case you didn't already know, Victober is a month-long celebration of all things Victorian literature, and it is hosted by Katie from Books and Things, Kate Howe, and Lucy the Reader. I think this is my fourth year now participating in Victober with varying degrees of success. Some years I've read a lot, some years I haven't read much, but it's definitely something that I look forward to every year now, and it's a staple in my reading calendar. So without further ado, let me get into the prompts and my TBR. So the first prompt was to read a Victorian book that equates to your favorite modern genre. And I was kind of torn on what to choose for my favorite modern genre, but I think in the end I had to go with historical fiction. So I have chosen A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens for this prompt, and I'm planning to listen to it on audiobook because I find that I really enjoy listening to Dickens stories more than I enjoy reading them. I traveled to Paris right before COVID turned the whole world upside down in February. I was in Paris, and so I thought it would be interesting to learn more about the French Revolution through the lens of how a Victorian person viewed those events. I don't actually know much about this novel except that I think it's set in both London and Paris, and knowing Dickens, it's going to have a complex cast of unforgettable characters. So I'm excited about that, and I don't really want to know more going in. I feel like this book is referenced a lot in popular culture, so it's one that I'm going to be glad to be able to have said that I've read and be able to recognize when people are making linkages to it in other books or in other discussions, and I'm excited to be continuing on my journey through Dickens' catalogue. The second prompt was to read a Victorian diary or collection of letters, and I've chosen to read The Englishwoman in Egypt, Letters from Cairo by Sophia Lane Poole. This prompt was actually a bit of a challenge for me. I didn't have anything off the top of my head like I did for the other prompts that would fit well with this challenge. I thought about reading maybe some of Henry Mayhew's London Labour and the London Poor, because it originally started as a letter to the editor, so I thought I could swing it to fit with this prompt, because it did start off as a letter and then was commissioned into the full book. But I thought maybe that would be a bit long to tackle all at once, and possibly a bit repetitive to just keep reading accounts of different professions. I think I would enjoy that book more spaced out over a longer period of time, reading snippets here and there rather than sitting down and reading it cover to cover. So after Googling around, I found The Englishwoman in Egypt, which is available on Project Gutenberg, and it appears to be a collection of letters that the author wrote while living in Cairo from 1842 to 1844. She was joining her brother there, who was an Egyptologist/anthropologist, and he was wanting to understand the female perspective on Egyptian society in a time when strict gender segregation meant that it was inaccessible for him to observe or interview women about these topics as a man. So he invited his sister Sophie, and she integrated into local life and was able to write about what it was like to live as an Egyptian woman in this time period. So it sounds like it's a fascinating collection of letters that's going to provide insight into the British colonial mindset at the time, and as well the role of women in both the UK and Egypt in society at the time. So I'm looking forward to that as well. The third prompt is to read a new to you book or short story by a favorite Victorian author, and for this I have chosen North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. This year I'm really thrilled to finally be prioritizing North and South. This book is the story of a young woman who moves from a small town in the south of England to a northern industrialized city and has to adapt to the challenges of her new environment while getting embroiled in the political debates surrounding industrialization and workers' rights. I have wanted to read this book for literally ages, probably almost 10 years I've wanted to read it, but I've been putting it off for a couple of reasons. I knew that it had a lot of similarities to Pride and Prejudice, so initially I wanted to read Pride and Prejudice first, and then once I'd read Pride and Prejudice I was worried that it would be too similar and maybe color my enjoyment of North and South to read them run one after the other back to back, that I would be maybe comparing them too much in my mind. So I wanted to give each book their own time for me to enjoy them. And then I had also watched and adored the North and South miniseries, but again I was kind of wanting to have some space from watching the miniseries till when I read the book, so that I could capture back a little bit of the magic of discovering the story while reading it, rather than remembering the miniseries perfectly event for event. So it's probably been 6 or 7 years since I watched the miniseries, so I think it's hazy enough in my memory that while I know kind of the main plot arc, there's going to be little things throughout the way that will still be surprises for me. I have read Wives and Daughters already by Elizabeht Gaskell, and I really, really enjoyed that book. It's definitely one that I consider a favorite classic, and so by extension, Elizabeht Gaskell is one of my favorite Victorian authors. And so I'm really, really looking forward to finally reading North and South for this prompt, and I'm probably going to be treating myself to a rewatch of the miniseries after I finish reading, because it's been a while. The fourth prompt is to read a book from a previous Victober TBR that you didn't get to, or one that you've been meaning to read for ages. So when I heard that this was one of the prompts for this year, I knew right away that I had to pick Barchester Towers by Anthony Trollope. This is the second book in Trollope's Chronicles of Barchester series, which follows a cast of characters living in a small town through romance, church politics, inheritance, debates, and other Victorian-era small-town drama. I actually started this book for Victober 2018, and according to my Kindle, got 8% of the way through it, and then put it aside for some reason and have never got back to it, despite intending to during Victober last year. So it's just been sitting languishing on my currently reading Goodreads shelf for 2 years now, which is long enough. So many people that I follow and respect on booktube rate this series really highly, and I did enjoy The Warden, the first book in the series, when I read that. So I really want to give Barchester Towers a proper chance this year, and hopefully I'll enjoy it and be able to continue on with the series in future Victobers. I'm also planning on participating in the group read of Shirley by Charlotte Bronte. I actually don't know much about this book except for the fact that it's one of the works by the Bronte sisters that I haven't read yet. I've read Jane Eyre, Wuthering Heights, A Tenant of Wildfell Hall, and Agnes Grey, so I think I have Woolett, Shirley, and The Professor, all by Charlotte Bronte, left to read. So when I saw that Shirley was selected as the group read for this year, I thought I would go ahead and add it to my TBR, because I do really want to one day read through the Bronte's entire catalogue. Then the bonus prompt was to read a Victorian book while wearing something Victorian-esque. And for this prompt, I'm kind of going to cheat and say that wearing my wedding ring counts. I actually chose a ring that's engraved with an orange blossom motif, and orange blossoms were popularized as a symbol for marriage or attire for weddings by Queen Victoria, so I thought that that was very fitting. Actually, one of my great-grandmothers wore orange blossoms in her hair as kind of a crown cascading down in the early 1900s, and one of my other grandmothers had an engraved wedding ring, so I kind of combined the two in my ring in honor of them and their strong marriages that I hope to be able to replicate. So I don't think it would focus to show the ring, but yeah, it's got little orange blossoms engraved all the way around, so anytime I'm reading while wearing this, I'm technically wearing something that's Victorian inspired. Then, because I'm ambitious, I've got a couple other books that I've added to my Victorian TBR that are either Victorian or Victorian adjacent that I think would fit really well into my reading month. The first is Poems by Meta Orred. I've never actually read a collection of Victorian poetry, but I saw Orred's famous poem In the Gloaming posted recently on social media, and I thought it would be fun to break up some of my longer, more intimidating reads this month by reading some poetry. Especially since it's available for free on Google Books. I thought, why not add this into the pile? Then, since I finished the Maisie Dobbs series in August this year, I've been kind of looking for another cozy mystery series to fill the void, and I've heard really good things about the Amelia Peabody series, so I'm planning to listen to the first book, Crocodiles on the Sandbank, as an audiobook this month. This series follows a fictional female Egyptologist through a series of adventures, hijinks, and mysteries after an inheritance allows her to follow her passion into archaeology. Apparently, according to Wikipedia, this first book is set around 1884, so definitely falls within the Victorian period, and I thought it would tie in really nicely, having read The Englishwoman in Egypt this month, that I would have kind of the fictional and non-fictional accounts of what it was like for British people living in Egypt at the time. Then last year, while reading Bleak House, I discovered that my 5-times great-grandfather was actually a marine store dealer in Victorian Newcastle, aka a real-life Mr. Crooks. So since then, and with both Bleak House and our mutual friend as inspiration, I've been fascinated by learning more about the garbage trades, so to speak, in that time period. So when I heard there was a newly released nonfiction book dealing with these issues called Rag and Bone, A Family History of What We've Thrown Away by Lisa Woolett, I knew I had to read that this year as well. I'll read the Goodreads blurb because it sounds absolutely fascinating. From relics of Georgian empire building and slave trading, through Victoria London's barged-out refuge to 1980s fly tipping and the pervasiveness of present-day plastics, Rag and Bone traces the story of our rubbish and through it our history of consumption, in a series of beachcombing and mudlarking walks, beginning in the Thames of central London, then out to the Kentish estuary, and eventually the sea around Cornwall. Lisa Woolett also tells the story of her family, a number of whom made their living from London's waste, and who made a similar journey downriver from the center of the city to the sea. A beautifully written but urgent mixture of social history, family memoir, and nature writing, Rag and Bone is a book about what we can learn from what we've thrown away and a call to think more about what we leave behind. So that sounds like it's going to tick a lot of boxes of things that I enjoy reading about. It's got a historical aspect, it's got some family history writing, memoir writing, and then also some current social critique about capitalism and consumption. So it sounds fascinating, and I'm really looking forward to getting to that as well. And lastly, when researching for the second prompt, some Victorian-era letters and diaries, I came across a collection of letters from Louis and Zelie Martin called A Call to Deeper Love. And Louis and Zelie Martin were actually the first modern married couple to be canonized as saints together, and one of their daughters, Therese, is also a canonized saint. So the letters span from the 1860s through the 1880s and apparently detail their family life, their marriage, and their strong faith. So it sounded very interesting, but since they're French, I don't know if this would really technically count for Victober, so I might just hold off and count this towards my nonfiction November TBR instead, as I think I might have enough books on the go for this October. Thanks for watching, and if you're participating in Victober this year, I hope you have an absolutely lovely reading month ahead, and until next time, enjoy wandering through the pages of a good book. Bye.